Hi there, welcome back to another lesson on functions. In this video, we will be covering what it means to return a value. So far, the functions that we have created do not return any value, they just print the output. So like we mentioned earlier, you can treat functions like black boxes where we only have a view of what goes in and what comes out. For the what goes in part, we see that we are able to specify the inputs. But what about what comes out? How do we specify what is the value that is returned? Because we are not able to access the in-between or intermediate steps, that's where returning a value comes in very handy. Let's take a look at a program. So like for example, if we wanted to create a function which adds two inputs together, input 1 and input 2, we can define a variable called answer inside of the function, which does the adding for us, and also we can print. But in this case, when we return, we are not returning any value because the second or there's no code after the word return. So if we call the function and we add 1 and 5, that prints out the value 6. But we notice that we are not able to actually use the value 6 because when we try to print answer inside of the main program, we actually get an error. So here you see I have a function called addition which takes in two inputs and stores the addition of these two inputs into a variable called answer, and finally prints out the value before returning. So if I call the function and I actually put in two inputs 1 and 5 and I run this line, we see that it's actually adding 1 and 5 and printing out the value of 6. But what is to note here is that if I try to use the variable answer which only exists within the functions, we get an error because once we exit the function, this variable answer no longer exists. So in order for us to solve this problem, we need to actually return something. So that's where we can actually return the value and store it inside a new variable called answer1 and print out the value answer1. So now we see that the value 6 is stored inside answer1, but answer still does not exist because answer only exists within the function. Once I exit, all names or all other variables that were declared within no longer exist. That goes for input 1 or input 2. All of these do not exist outside of the function. Let's take a look at another example where we previously coded for a cash register, but our cash register did not take GST into consideration, which in Singapore it's 7%. So if we define the name or define a function called GST with one input called price, we can actually return price multiplied by 1.07, which is the GST. So here we are defining two variables, apple and orange, and we are asking for the name of the user as well as how many apples and oranges he bought. So previously what we did was that we simply calculated out what was the price depending on, or what was the total price depending on how many apples and how many oranges he bought. But if we wanted to include GST, now we need to call this function called GST, and this total price, after you run the function, it returns 1.07 times total price and you store it back into the original variable. So let's try and see whether it works. So my name is Joshua. I bought one apple, so it's $1.20, and one orange, which is $1. But I did not define my function. So let's try it again. My name is Joshua. How many apples did I buy? 1, which is $1.20. one orange, which is $1. So I should be expecting that my total price is $2.20. However, because now I would like to include the GST, I've actually put this in as well. So if I actually make this comment, if we actually make this a comment, we see that if I were to run the code again, one apple and one orange, we see that it's only $2.20. So by actually calling the function GST, we are able to include the GST component of the price. So that brings us to the end of this section on how to return a value. I hope it was clear. We will be looking at a few more examples later on in the next video. Thank you.